of Nigeria, General Christopher Gwaba Musa, OFR, Chief of Defense Staff, Armed Forces of Nigeria, distinguished African Chiefs of Defense Staff, and I'd like at this moment also to recognize the Minister of State for Defense, and also to recognize Professor Gambari, Professor Bande, Professor Lulumba. You always, you articulate what we're all thinking, but oftentimes we don't have the opportunity or perhaps are in a position to say. So thank you for being here with us. I'd like to also recognize my big brother, His Excellency Dr. Mohammed Ibn Chabbas, and I would like to recognize most especially the women experts that are in the panels that will be with you throughout the next 3 days. And just to say that, as we've talked about the women, every one of you is born of a woman, unless you want to challenge that. But secondly, the burden on which women face, whether they lose their husband's ultimate sacrifice in conflict, or that they are the ones that lose their lives, they are the ones that lose their children. They bear the greatest brunt of all the conflicts that we have today in the world. And so for them, I think they deserve their place here today and recognition. Last but not least, in his 7 to 10 minutes, David Wiseman, thank you for talking to us about the day after. Often that is forgotten, that those that manage to go home also have to live a life and heal and be part very much of the societies that they left to serve. And so thank you for reminding us. Excellencies, Excellence, it is an honor to join you for this first ever African Chiefs of Defense Staff Summit. And I'd like to thank General Musa and the government of Nigeria for your warm invitation and your welcome to the United Nations. I speak as a proud African woman and as someone who has seen the cost of insecurity in families and communities across our continent, from Boko Haram in Maiduguri to the RSF in Sudan and to the conflict in Ethiopia and more recently in Gaza. These gatherings mark the birth, this one in particular, marks the birth of a new era in African security cooperation at such a critical moment. It is the first of its kind to represent the boots on the ground, a rare opportunity to connect their realities with the policy decisions that shape our continent's security. Nearly 1 in every 5 people on Earth call Africa home. Each one deserves a life in safety and in dignity. And that means protecting civilians, respecting borders, and standing by the principles of international law and the UN Charter. Above all, it calls for a united approach against our common threats. We know that Africa is at the epicenter of global terrorism deaths, and today Professor Gambari has told us just how many of those insurgency groups are on the continent. Al-Qaeda and the Islamic State affiliates coordinate across our continent, and the attacks in West Africa coastal countries surging 250% in 2 years. Violent extremism, once thought to be history, is back again in the Lake Chad Basin and in Somalia and beyond. By last year's end, over 14,000 schools were closed in the Central Sahel due to the conflict. Aside from the children who are forcibly recruited, we see young people who are drawn by fear, by money, by a false promise of belonging. And when young people see no path to education or to justice and a future, extremist propaganda finds an audience, and we risk losing an entire generation. In this new era of technology, where it should be advancing as a human endeavor, these groups are using new technologies like unmanned aerial systems and improvised explosive devices to wreak havoc. We cannot afford to be bystanders. Africa must take ownership, must be proactive, and shape how these tools will be used. Cyberspace today is now a battle space. Elections are manipulated, institutions undermined, lies are spread until neighbor turns against neighbor. And we have seen this before. Once it was a radio carrying messages that ignited genocide. Today it is social media amplifying hate at terrifying speed. Artificial intelligence is already transforming the landscape of security. Today we do have AI tools that are helping countries suffering from conflict and insecurity, identifying food insecurity, predicting displacement caused by climate shocks, even detecting and clearing landmines. Soon they could help us to spot patterns of unrest before violence erupts. Sadly, the same technology that offers solutions also carries profound risks. AI's expansion into security systems raises fundamental questions about human rights, dignity, and the rule of law, from autonomous border surveillance to predictive policing. It creates fertile ground for misunderstanding, miscalculation, and mistakes. AI-enabled cyber attacks could cripple entire infrastructure and paralyze essential services. Algorithms today are already being used to make life or death decisions. And to turn to another challenge, climate change. It is also reshaping the geography of security across our continent, fueling food scarcity, endangering our people. Extreme heat, sea level rise, shifting rainfall patterns are driving displacement, exacerbating resource competition, and fueling instability. Shrinking water levels in the Lake Chad Basin have displaced over 3 million people. I saw this firsthand when I was Minister of Environment. The evidence is overwhelming, and it is destabilizing our world. The UN Security Council has acknowledged that climate change is a threat multiplier that fuels conflict, displaces populations, and undermines state stability. The International Court of Justice recently recognized climate change as an urgent and existential threat to our world. The IPCC has left no room of doubt. Africa is one of the most exposed regions in the world to climate change. The rippling effect is rising displacement and migration, putting food systems and infrastructure under severe pressure and creating more opportunities for instability and exploitation. The result speaks volumes. Climate change is a clear and present danger to peace. Our seas are also becoming a new front line. Organized crime on our waters is feeding violence on our land. In the Gulf of Guinea, piracy, illicit trade are funding terrorism. In the Red Sea, maritime insecurity is undermining stability far beyond the shoreline. Excellencies, Excellence, each of these threats all share one characteristic. They are transnational. Our response must be that too. When we act in isolation, we hand our adversaries their greatest advantage, our division. Regional cooperation is the linchpin of African security and defense, but we also know that this is easier said than done. Defense collaboration is not simple. We are talking about 54 countries, each with their own policies, their histories, their priorities, and their difficulties. This makes it all the more remarkable that though the complexity and diversity, African forces find ways to act together, and you have. From the African Union's peace support operations to the Algeria African Center for Study and Research on Terrorism, Cape Verde Center for Security and Transnational Organized Crime, and Cameroon's International School for Security Forces, amongst many. The African Union deploys peace support operations where others can and will not. The multinational Joint Task Force in the Lake Chad Basin coordinates regional efforts against Boko Haram. ECOWAS in West Africa and IGAD in the Horn are coordinating troops, logistics, and political engagement. The G5 Sahel and the Accra Initiative have also played key roles. But too often, such initiatives are being held back by mistrust, tensions, gaps, and in some cases, sadly, undermined by the international community. Trust is not built overnight, but without it, every effort to strengthen our partnerships and our response in defense of our people will fall short. Collaboration must be targeted and intentional, and I see 3 opportunities where our unity can tip the balance. First is resources. Pooling our budgets for joint responses makes us stronger than scattering the spending. We proved this when Nigeria helped in the Gambia and Liberia. We must find that spirit again. At the same time, we need to think bigger about financing. National security budgets must be complemented by international support. We can leverage the prevention components of other budgets to reinforce stability and reduce the costs of conflict before they spiral. Cutting off illicit financing is part of this battlefront. Yaba's anti-money laundering work and the cooperation through the multi-joint task force and the Lake Chad Basin Commission are vital to choke off the money flows that sustain conflict from outside of the continent. Second, intelligence and innovation. We need the right tools and mapping in place to plan and to drive strategy at scale, reinforcing the Accra Initiative, the ECOWAS Standby Force, and giving the Joint Threat Fusion and Analysis Cell the support it needs to ensure data become decisions. The same applies at sea, joint patrols that make the Yaoundé architecture real protection for people and infrastructure. And innovation must be part of our defense, collaborating on AI from drones to cyber tools, and building on African Union's AI strategy can help us to set common standards to keep technology serving people. And third, people and partnerships. Our continent is full of military and academic centers of excellence. We need to harness this strategy and this training capacity, use it more efficiently, and deploy it where it is most needed. And we must unite the public and the private sectors. Soldiers learning side by side with engineers, technicians, innovators, regular fora with business to share cutting-edge knowledge. This is how Africa's own labs and companies can power our security future. In turn, the private sector benefits from access to credit to grow their companies and to feed their bottom line. It creates an enabling environment for young people to strive for their futures. Excellencies, Excellence, history has shown that African military cooperation and collaboration has already proven itself on the world stage. 3 decades ago, Ghana and Nigeria pioneered ECOMOG in Liberia when regional interventions were untested. African military diplomacy stepped up into breach when others hesitated. From those West African origins and beyond, Rwanda transformed from recovery to becoming the #2 global contributor for peacekeeping forces. Today, 9 of the world's top 15 contributors of UN peacekeeping are African nations, African troops, all active in Somalia, in CAR, and the DRC. So we are not only recipients of support from the international community, we are contributors of that support. And without African leadership, there would be no effective peacekeeping. Now, peacekeeping is entering a new era. However, this new era is facing headwinds. Politically, the UN Security Council is deadlocked, and political support is eroding. Meanwhile, external actors are pursuing their own agendas on African soil, complicating and exacerbating our security landscape. Financially, missions are now underfunded. This makes Resolution 2719 of Somalia so vital. With this resolution, and the UN Security Council acknowledged a simple truth. African crises demand African leadership, backed by global financial support for African solutions to succeed. This era, a new era of peacekeeping, also brings with it an opportunity for a new face. That face has to be younger, more diverse in people and skills that will work with communities on the front and the day after. And that includes, Excellencies, women. On the day after, women are the anchors of recovering and helping to rebuild trust, to heal communities long after the guns fall silent. The day after also demands something else from us as military leaders: justice and accountability. They matter the day after. Everyone deserves their day in court. Even accused terrorists, as difficult as this may be able to accept, they must face justice in a court of law. And let us perhaps remind ourselves that terrorists are not born. They are our children. They are the young people who have gone astray, badly astray. And it is our duty to bring them back out from the cold into building their nations and not destroying them. These are some of the issues that international community will raise, and as leaders, you will have to be in a position that you can defend. Excellencies, let us be reminded why we need peace for development. Without it, neither the Sustainable Development Goals nor Agenda 2063 can be achieved. Farmers cannot farm without security. Energy systems cannot be built without being protected. Every school, every hospital depends on security. And we cannot have our children, our girls, in fear of kidnapping. Without security, development is impossible. Without development, security cannot hold, and lasting peace must be built upon both. Both are the foundation of our agendas 2030 and Africa's vision for Agenda 2063. They connect the dots between prosperity, good governance, and peace. Food security, education, health, decent work, social protection, green technology, and resilience, justice and institutions, and people must be able to trust in. We know that every additional year of schooling reduces the likelihood of a young person joining armed groups by up to 13%. This evidence begs the question, how do we invest in peace? Is it just military spending? Is it development spending? Is it both? That is the discussion that we will need to have in this room and beyond. And it means tackling root causes. It means democracy that is robust and representative, not on constitutional changes dressed up as solutions. While this might seem legitimate in many eyes, in the longer term, democracy and by extension security will be weakened. Instead, strong institutions underpinned by strong democracies and strong security apparatus are the safeguard against instability. Let's give some deep thought to the resources that we are allocating to achieve stability. Last year, the world spent $2.7 trillion on the military, more than at any point in the history of the world. Yet insecurity has not diminished. In fact, conflicts are spreading, not shrinking. At the same time, the world fell short by $4 trillion each year for just basic development needs. $4 trillion missing for school, for jobs, for clinics. That imbalance raises a clear question. What kind of spending truly delivers the peace you are willing to fight to protect? This is at the heart of the African Union's call to silence the guns, because silencing the guns is not just about weapons laid down. It is about investing in people, tackling root causes, and creating societies where stability is built on justice, opportunity, and trust. Success will only be possible if we create the fiscal space for investing in people and stability. And so we do need in Africa a fairer chance and a fairer finance, debt relief, affordable credit, and a global system that works for Africa is what we need today. We need a global financial architecture that reflects today's realities. And we need African countries strong, but more importantly, united in calling for these changes. Our chiefs, excellencies, friends, strategic defense collaboration is not a slogan. It is the bridge between the threats that we face today and the peace that we promise tomorrow. I've seen the challenge, I know you have. I've also seen what's possible when we find common ground. The outcome of this week must be heard beyond this room. It must be carried into every international forum where decisions on defense are being made on our behalf. That's how we will shape Africa's security on Africa's terms. But reshaping security also means changing mindsets. We must see women not only as victims of war, but as partners in peace. And just as women are the bedrock of peace in our homes, they must be a part of the search for peace on the war front. This is not about winning wars, it is about winning peace, and is about doing it together. As Nelson Mandela Madiba once said, I dream of the realization of the unity of Africa, whereby its leaders combine in their efforts to solve the problems of this continent. That dream calls on us to act with resolve, with courage, with trust, and a shared purpose to safeguard the future of Africa, the future of Africans that we want. I thank you.